Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is our group learning program, and we start with meditation. And then afterwards, I usually do a talk to be able to help you guys understand the path to enlightenment. We're actually coming towards the end of our program where I'm at the back of this book because each Sunday I go chapter by chapter and I share the teachings of the Buddha. Now we're in the section titled Frequently Asked Questions. There's 11 individual questions that are frequently asked by students, and I've put those together at the back of the book in order to be able to help students to be able to understand the answers to these questions. So welcome to all of you here at the temple. Welcome to anyone joining online. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we start this is with some chanting. This will help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. I'm then going to come in with some guidance to be able to help you. There's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating, and then we'll come out of meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class. So you can take whatever position is comfortable for you, and I'll be coming in with the guidance after the chanting. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Mahakeva Otang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso emakeva Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sekato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusrang Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิ สุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good evening to all of you guys, everyone here at the temple, everyone joining online as well. In order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to have help from teachers and guides to be able to help you to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. And getting to enlightenment is to get to the point where your mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, where you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You eliminate all your anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings like guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and others. You're going to need to learn in classes like this where you're learning formally, but you're also going to need to ask questions to a teacher. And there's many questions that a student might ask to their teacher. And what I've done here at the back of the book is I've added this frequently asked questions section where I've put together all the frequently asked questions that students might ask. Because all through the rest of the book, I'm sharing with students how to actually train the mind to get to enlightenment. And there's certain questions that are frequently asked that didn't necessarily fit in to any of the other parts of the book. So I just kind of put them here at the back of the book to be able to help students to be able to get answers to these questions. So I'm going to share with you guys what those questions are, and I'm going to share with you what the answers to those questions are too, because you might actually have some of these questions too, as it relates to the path to enlightenment and training your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. I'm going to be pausing a few times as we go during the talk to see what questions you guys might have. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online, you guys can ask questions. Here at the temple, we have microphones for you guys so that way the people online will be able to hear you. And for anybody who's online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like. So the first set of questions that I oftentimes hear from students start with this one. How do I become a Buddhist? This is a very common question. Well, the thing that I share with people is that the Buddha wasn't a Buddhist, so you don't need to become a Buddhist either to be able to get to enlightenment. In fact, what this is just a label that an individual is trying to assign to themselves and say, I am a Buddhist. But what you need to do in order to be able to get to enlightenment is you need to realize non-self, where you let go of all of these labels and you don't assign those to who you are as a person. If you think I am American, or I am Argentinian, or I am Canadian, I am Chinese, I am Spanish, I am this, I am that. Well, it's only a matter of time before somebody speaks fondly about those things, or they speak unfondly, where they have disagreeable things, and now your mind is going to experience anger and sadness and frustration. When you hear people say things agreeable to you about your self-identity, like say, all Buddhists are lovely and kind and warm and gentle. If you identify with I am Buddhist, now you're going to be happy about that. But it's only a matter of time before you hear people say degrading and disparaging things about Buddhists. So if you hold on to this identity in your mind of who you think you are as a person, and I am Buddhist, well, it's only a matter of time before you experience anger and frustration when you hear somebody say something degrading and disparaging. So there isn't anything to become Buddhist. That's not a requirement in order to be able to get to enlightenment. In fact, you need to do just the opposite, which is train the mind to let all of that go. Get rid of all those labels. And by the way, who is it in the world that determines who is a Buddhist and who's not a Buddhist? And how does anybody in the world determine how to become a Buddhist? There's nobody that's in the world that's like that. The Buddha himself didn't have any teachings like that. So you don't need to become a Buddhist in order to be able to get to enlightenment and train your mind through these teachings. Sometimes people ask, do I need to give up all my possessions, occupation, and relationships to attain enlightenment? Where this comes from is people have understood that the Buddha left his family for a period of time in order to be able to train his mind to get to enlightenment. He was a prince destined to become a king, and they think that maybe that's how you get to enlightenment, is by getting rid of all of these things. This isn't actually true. The Buddha actually had possessions. He had an occupation. He was a teacher, and he had relationships, plenty of relationships. So you're going to need to have these things in order to be able to sustain your life. What you need to eliminate is not the object itself, but the way that the mind longs and yearns for it to be permanent. So for example, like a possession, you don't need to eliminate your mobile phone. What you need to eliminate is the craving for it to be permanent, so that when you misplace it, when you lose it, when it breaks, when someone steals it or anything like this, when it stops working, you won't be upset. You won't be angry. You understand that's normal, that you're going to have this phone for a period of time, but it's not permanent. There's going to be some situations where you might lose it, or you misplace it, or someone steals it, or it breaks. This is all normal. This is impermanence. So you need to eliminate the longing, yearning for it to be permanent. The same thing with your occupation. Your occupation is not permanent. If you hold on to it and identify with that as who you are, and you cling to this money or this position, then when you don't have it anymore, you'll be quite discontent. Or relationships. People are going to be coming and going in and out of your life your entire life. There's never going to be a time where everyone in your life is permanent. So people are going to be coming and going in and out of your life. And eventually you're going to die anyway. So all your relationships are impermanent. But what people do is they hold on to these things within their mind, craving for it to be permanent. And now when you're with that person, you're happy. But when that relationship is over, you're sad or frustrated or angry or some other discontent feeling. So you don't need to eliminate the possessions, the occupation, the relationships. You need to eliminate the way the mind's longing, yearning for it to be permanent. That's the inner work and the inner growth that you're doing in the mind. Here's another question. What is reincarnation and rebirth? Are they the same thing? Well, they're not the same thing, and the Buddha didn't necessarily teach these things. I'll explain what I mean by this. When people talk about reincarnation, what they're usually talking about is a soul that goes from one life to the next, and that you are the same being. It's just that there's this soul that goes from one life to the next. This isn't what the Buddha actually taught. He didn't teach that there is a soul or there isn't a soul. And he didn't teach that you're the same being every single time. So the word that he used in the original teachings is samsara. And this is usually translated to the cycle of rebirth. Reincarnation is not what the Buddha was talking about, but the cycle of rebirth is just a little bit closer. But this isn't 100% accurate either. Because when the Buddha talks about samsara, he talks about it as a new body in a new mind every single time. So one of the ways you might think about this is the cycle of new existence, because there isn't any actually thing that's being reborn. It's a new body and a new mind every single time. It's a brand new being. So while some people refer to it this way, you might think about it as the cycle of new existence. And this isn't something that you need to really understand right up front in terms of what the Buddha taught on this topic. When you're first getting started on the path to enlightenment, I suggest people to set aside the cycle of rebirth, but it is something that you can ultimately independently verify, because none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. What you need to do is learn, examine, and investigate his teachings. You need to reflect on them to verify if they're true or they're false, and then you need to practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life and training your mind through those teachings. So there's nothing here to believe, including the cycle of rebirth. You can independently verify this when you cultivate the wisdom of how to do that. But when you're first getting started on the path, I recommend people just set it to the side. Can I be Buddhist without believing in rebirth? Well, with the previous questions, you might actually already know the answer to this. Can I be Buddhist? Well, there's no such thing, right? You don't need to be a Buddhist. You just need to learn how to train your mind. That's what you need to do. And there is no belief in the teachings of the Buddha, so you're not believing anything. And the Buddha didn't necessarily teach the cycle of rebirth. He taught the cycle of new existence, that there's these new existences that are occurring over and over and over and over again. So of course you can train your mind on the path to enlightenment without believing in Buddhism. In fact, or without believing in rebirth. In fact, I would teach people don't believe in anything whatsoever, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because someone convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. You would like to get to a point where you have wisdom. That's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. Here's another question. What does it mean to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha? And is there a ceremony to do this? Well, let me first explain what these things are. There's the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. This is called the triple gem or the triple jewel. The Buddha is the individual, the teacher, who got to enlightenment by himself. He dedicated the rest of his life to sharing those teachings with countless people, and countless people got to enlightenment. And then he preserved his teachings so that other people could get to enlightenment after his death. That's what a Buddha is. Very rare in the world. You can get to enlightenment, but you just wouldn't be a Buddha at that point. What the Dhamma is this is the Pali word for the teachings. And then the Sangha, what this is the community. You need all three of these things in order to get to enlightenment. You're going to need confidence in the Buddha, access to his teachings, and you're going to need to be part of a community. So this is why we call it the triple gem or the triple jewel, because you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without this. And you might not have this when you first come to the path to enlightenment. You might not have confidence in the Buddha. That's developed slowly over time through gaining access to his teachings, practicing them and seeing that they actually work. And then the community is there to be able to support you in your growth and development on the path to enlightenment. So people talk about taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. What refuge is to have protection. And what people think is there's some kind of ceremony or ritual that you can do that's going to help you to be able to have this protection. And if you do this, that somehow magically your life is going to be protected. This isn't actually true. The Buddha never had any kind of ceremony to take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, or the Buddha, the teachings, in the community. But today you will find people that will actually tell you that there's a certain ceremony that you can do and that you're going to experience this transformation through this ceremony. In order to get to enlightenment, all you need to do is start learning and practicing the teachings with the guidance of a teacher. You don't need to do any kind of ceremony. You don't need to convert to Buddhism. When the Buddha talks about taking refuge in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, what he's talking about is learning the teachings, training the mind, getting the mind to the point where it's protected from discontentedness. That by the time you train your mind fully to get to enlightenment, your mind's protected. There's nothing that can happen that will shake up your mind. That's what it is to have refuge in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, is to actually train your mind. And there's no ceremony that needs to happen in order for this to occur. So do you guys have any questions about these, either here at the temple or online? Remember, you guys have the microphones, and then online you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So let me know if you guys have questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's go to the next set of questions. So here, sometimes people ask, what is our purpose in life? What is the purpose of our human existence? What I share with people in this book series when I answer this question is that, in my opinion, this question comes from the human ego. The ego is the arrogance and the pride, putting yourself above people or below people. The ego wants there to be some kind of significance. It's kind of like, I am somebody. I want there to be this purpose for my existence. Well, there really is no purpose. If you've ever been in an airplane and you look down at human beings, we look like a bunch of ants. We're just one ant of another ant, right? We're just going around the world, collecting up our things that we need in order to sustain our life. We don't need to have some major purpose in life. And in fact, if you grab onto a purpose and think that this is your purpose, when that thing changes, you'll be discontent. You'll be unwilling to actually let that thing go. So for example, when I graduated college and I was doing IT for 7.5 years, I was doing computer work. If I thought that was my purpose in life, I would have never been willing to let that go and move into having my own businesses. So I had my own businesses for several years. And if I would have held on to that and I thought that that was my purpose in life, I would have never been willing to do what I'm doing now, which is share the teachings of the Buddha. So as soon as you allow your mind to grab onto something and think this is your purpose in life, now you're going to either experience discontentedness, which you're now clinging to that thing, so you will experience that, and or you'll be unwilling to actually let that go and move on to something new. So it's better to just understand that there is no purpose, and this is just coming from the mind's ego. But oftentimes people don't like that answer. They want a purpose in this life. So what I share in the book is, okay, if you would like some kind of purpose in life, here's your purpose. The purpose is to train your mind in order to be able to get to enlightenment so that you can eliminate your ego, and then you will see that there is no purpose to life, that you need to be able to cultivate wisdom, grow and develop, become a better and better person, get to the point where you're completely peaceful and joyful. So saying there's no purpose in life isn't to say that, we're just bored and we're lonely and gosh, let's just sit around and be mundane. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm sharing is get rid of that ego that's wanting you to think that there's some kind of purpose here, and then just apply your effort and energy to training your mind so you can get to a point where life is very fulfilling, your mind is cheerful and bright, glad and uplifted, and you're doing many things in the world that you thoroughly enjoy. Then sometimes people ask, can I exercise the physical body and still get to enlightenment or attain enlightenment? The answer is yes, of course. The exercise itself isn't a problem. The problem that an individual will experience if they're exercising is not the fact that they're exercising. It's that if you cling to the idea that I am going to exercise every morning at 8 a.m., well, as soon as you don't exercise at 8 a.m. and maybe you miss your exercise, you'll be grumpy, you'll be irritable, because your mind is craving that permanence. It's not the fact that you didn't have this physical activity that you're grumpy and irritable. It's because the mind is craving for this exercise to be permanent, when in reality, you can have the goal or the objective to exercise every morning, but it's not going to happen every morning. It's not possible, or even 5 days a week or 3 days a week. You can have that goal, but I can tell you right now, it's not going to happen every single week that way because of the universal truth of impermanence. So you're not interested in clinging to the idea that you have to exercise at a specific time every day, because you're just setting yourself up for discontentedness when you don't get what you want. The other part of this is that if you have ego or arrogance around your exercise workout, you might look down on other people who don't actually exercise and think that you're a better person because I exercise and those people don't. So you got to make sure you get rid of anything like that and not allowing your mind to have that arrogance or pride in there. Then sometimes people ask, is medicine and medical procedures for the body an attachment? Well, where this comes from is that an individual doesn't understand what a craving, desire, attachment is. It's not the object itself that is the craving, desire, attachment that's causing discontentedness. It's the way the mind's longing, yearning for it. So you could have a medical procedure or you could have medicine that's not an attachment, but you could also have medicine or a medical procedure that is an attachment. It's not the object itself that determines whether or not it's an attachment or not. It's the way that the mind relates to this. The example that I give to help people see this is that if you had a liter of water in the car and you were driving to a hiking trail and you were 30 minutes down the hiking trail, you left your water in the car and you were like, oh my gosh, I left my water in the car. Ah, and you hurried up back to your car and you slung open the door and you got your liter of water. Ah, yes, water, 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 water. And then another person could be out on the trail and they could be like, I forgot my water. I should probably make my way back and get my water. So in both of these scenarios, the object is the same. It's the water. But the difference is the first person had a craving, desire, attachment. They could only have a stable mind if they were getting what they want, which is the water. They were craving that permanence. So when their water wasn't with them, their mind was shaken up. But the second person understood that this bottle of water is not permanent. And this person was just like, I don't have my water. Let me go get my water. And they calmly made their way back to the car. So it's not the water itself that determines whether or not this is a craving, desire, attachment. It's the way the mind's relating to this. So it's the same thing with medicine and medical procedures. You could be attached to your medicine or certain medical procedures, but you can also choose not to. It's how you train your mind to be able to do that. And then sometimes people ask, what significance can I apply to dreams? Okay, so what I share with people is there is no significance. Sometimes people contact me and they say, oh, I had this particular dream. Does that mean I'm going to get rich and wealthy? Or does that mean my boyfriend or girlfriend is going to come back to me? What does that mean? Right? Well, if you talk to enough dream interpreters, you're going to get different answers from different people. Right? There's nobody that can interpret any kind of dreams. Instead, just understand your mind is very creative, it's very powerful, and it can think all kinds of different things while you're dreaming. There's no specific meaning for it. The way that you can use your dreams, if you'd like, is that if you keep having the same recurring dream and you're waking up and realizing that you have certain feelings and emotions, you can look at that dream and see what's going on, and you could potentially uncover certain cravings, desires, attachments. So for example, if you keep having a dream of dying and you keep waking up and you're fearful with the fact that you've been dying in these dreams, well, you understand you're craving permanent life, and that's not possible. Or if you're up high and you keep waking up scared and fearful, you can see that you're afraid of heights. So your mind is having craving, desire, attachment here. So you can use your dreams for insight in that way. But in terms of anything else, like what your future is going to hold and all that kind of stuff, that's just the mind's delusion. Then people ask, why is enlightenment permanent? The reason why they ask this question is because they think that the Buddha taught everything is impermanent. And this isn't actually true. The Buddha did teach that conditioned objects are impermanent. They arise, they change, and they fade away. They're temporary. They're constantly changing. But then he also taught that unconditioned objects do not arise, do not change, and they do not fade away. There's two unconditioned objects. There's enlightenment and the natural laws. The natural laws of existence are unconditioned. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. This is why enlightenment is permanent, because in the unenlightened state, you have a conditioned mind. There are certain conditions in your mind that are causing it to experience anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So that's why you experience those feelings, because of the conditions. You have a conditioned mind, so you experience conditional feelings. These feelings arise, they change, and they fade away based on some condition. By the time you purify your mind, you've gotten rid of those conditions. So now your mind is unconditioned. So your mind doesn't have feelings that arise, change, and fade away. Your mind is permanently in this mental state where it's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind is cheerful, bright, glad, and uplifted, but it's unconditioned. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for your mind to experience that happiness and that joy. That's why it's permanent, because if there's a condition that is causing a feeling, that condition is not permanent. So that's why the feeling is arising, it changes, and it fades away, because as soon as the condition changes, your feeling isn't experienced anymore. But when you're experiencing unconditioned mental qualities, that there doesn't need to be any condition met in order to experience this mental quality, then that means there's nothing that can change that's going to change the way your mind's experiencing that. So by the time you get to enlightenment, it is a permanent mental state because the mind is purified of the causes and conditions that are producing conditioned feelings. So your mind is now experiencing unconditioned mental qualities. Then lastly here, students sometimes ask, why are donations of support for teachers of Gotama Buddha's teachings so important? There's two reasons here. The first one is the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha, that in order for the teachings to be shared with others, there needs to be an ability to share those teachings. So all throughout history, from the lifetime of the Buddha, people have been practicing generosity towards his teachings and towards individuals to be able to get access to those teachings. If it wasn't for that, the teachings wouldn't actually be shared in the world. Having the Buddha's teachings in the world is the very best thing that could ever happen for all of humanity, because these teachings actually work and it leads to the point where your mind is peaceful and joyful. But if we didn't have the teachings continue in the world, then other people wouldn't be able to get access to them. So everything involved in sharing these teachings is typically offered at no cost. At least that's what I do. That's not what other people necessarily do, but that's what I do. There's never a time where I either want or expect people to give me anything in order to be able to share these teachings. So it's all available at no cost. But there is a cost for sharing these teachings. We need to be able to pay electric and water and all the other different things that we do in order to be able to share these teachings. So some people decide to support what it is that we're doing in order to be able to share these teachings. So that's one of the reasons why it's important, so that other people can actually get access to the teachings and experience this life transformation to be able to get to a point where their mind's peaceful and joyful. And then the second one is that generosity actually leads to your enlightenment. When you're in the unenlightened state, there's craving, desire, attachment, where the mind's holding on and craving permanence. And because of that, the mind will experience a certain amount of selfishness. But when you're practicing generosity, this trains your mind to let go. So not only would it be wise to practice generosity towards a temple or teachers to be able to help share the teachings, but it's also wise for you to practice generosity with other people too. Your parents, your siblings, your boss, your coworkers, your neighbors, people you don't even know that are just in your community. Because giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return trains your mind to let go. That's part of the training. It's not just meditation that trains your mind to get to enlightenment. There's other practices and other tools that you need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is people think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. But for those types of individuals who think that way, their practice is very heavy and very focused on meditation, rather than understanding there's this whole plethora of teachings that need to be learned and understood in order to be able to get to enlightenment. It's not just meditation. So generosity is helping an individual to be able to get to enlightenment. So that's why sharing donations to be able to support the teachings of the Buddha is important, is because it helps people get access to this life-improving teachings in order to transform their life, and it helps you to be able to get to enlightenment. So any questions here on any of these things here? Anything here online? Okay, I don't see any questions either here or online. So just a few more things to share with you guys. This is how you determine whether you're actually enlightened or not. All through the book, like I mentioned, I help people to understand what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. But here at the end of the book, I help people to understand how to know that you've actually gotten to enlightenment. The first one is that an enlightened being will never stop practicing the teachings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're practicing these teachings effortlessly. But in order to get to enlightenment, it takes a significant amount of effort to be able to get your mind to that point. But an enlightened being would never stop practicing these teachings. You'll be fully practicing the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching of the Buddha that's going to guide you to enlightenment, which includes the Four Noble Truths and the 5 Precepts. These are integrated teachings that move into the Eightfold Path. But there's other teachings as well. So you'd be fully practicing this, so you'd understand it really well. In order to get to enlightenment, you will have eliminated the 10 fetters. So you would need to know what those are, what the symptoms of them are, how to eliminate them, and how to know that you've actually eliminated them. I'm actually going to be teaching a retreat in August where I'm going to be spending an hour to an hour and a half on each individual fetter, helping people to understand what they are, the symptoms of them, how to eliminate them, and how to know that you've actually eliminated them. You'll have cultivated the mind that is completely practicing what's called the Brahma Viharas. These are 4 healthy mental states that are essentially antidoting certain symptoms that you have in your mind. This is where the Buddha gets a reputation of being like a doctor, because there's certain symptoms that are in the mind, and there's a certain prescription or a certain antidote that you can apply. But you are your own best doctor. So if you understand these and you understand the symptoms, when your mind is experiencing certain symptoms, you can apply the prescription and it'll transform your mind. So you'll be practicing the Brahma Viharas. You'll also be fully practicing what's called the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is a tool to fine-tune your mind and actually bring it to the middle. Then the telltale sign that your mind is actually enlightened is you won't experience any discontentedness for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You will see your mind's continuously peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. There's no anger, sadness, frustration, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. All of that is eliminated. There is no even slight ickiness in your mind. You won't have the slightest dislike towards another person. Right now, if you dislike certain people, that's actually coming from your own mind. It's not coming from other people. It's coming from your own mind. So you'll get to a point where you won't even have the slightest dislike towards another person. You can have love and kindness and be gentle with everyone. So do you guys have questions on this? I don't see any questions. Okay, just a few more things. This is the Buddha getting ready to get close to where he's actually dying. He actually knew 3 months before he was going to die. That's how enlightened he was, that he was aware that he was going to die in 3 months. So he was giving his students a heads up so that they could actually get prepared and ask any last minute questions before he actually died. So here he was saying, "Wander forth, O monks, for the welfare of the multitude, for the peacefulness of the multitude, out of compassion for the world, for the good, welfare, and peacefulness of heavenly beings and humans. Teach, O monks, the teachings that are good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing. Reveal the perfectly complete and purified holy life. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are falling away because they do not hear the teachings. There will be those who will understand the teachings." So this is the reason why a Buddha actually teaches, out of compassion for the world. Nobody forced the Buddha to teach. Nobody convinced the Buddha to teach. Nobody paid the Buddha to teach, right? He wasn't expecting or wanting anything from his students. He was teaching out of compassion. What compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. He already got to peace. He already got to joy. He was helping other people to be able to experience that. That's why a Buddha teaches. So he's encouraging his students here to make sure that they continue to share the teachings for the good, welfare, and peacefulness of all beings. That's what the teachings in this path leads to. So here he was encouraging them to continue and to continue to move forward. Here the Buddha says, when there was a student kind of begging and pleading with him not to die, he says, "One who sees the teachings sees me. One who sees me sees the teachings." Because he was saying to this student, why do you need this foul body to be here? He says, "I've already shared the teachings. One who sees the teachings sees me." Because if you understand the teachings of the Buddha, he's explaining to you the way the world is. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And when he explains to you the way the world is, you can see the world functioning exactly the way he explained that it's actually functioning. So if you can see that, if you can see the teachings in the world, you will see him, because you know that this is him, because he's explaining to you exactly how this world functions. And if you see him, you see the teachings, meaning he was a living, breathing, walking example of his teachings. So this was him reminding his students that, hey, if you've learned the teachings, you will see me everywhere around you because I've explained to you what the world is and how the world functions. So you will know that that is me because you will have seen me because you've understood the teachings. And then here's his last words, and the last thing I'll share for today. This is where he was, last words before dying. He says, Ananda, it may be that you will think the teacher's instruction has ceased. Now we have no teacher. It should not be seen like this, Ananda, for what I have taught and explained to you as teachings and discipline will, at my passing, be your teacher. Now, monks, I declare to you, all conditioned things are of a nature to decay. Strive on untiringly. So here he used his very last words to actually deliver his very first teaching. What he's teaching here is the universal truth of impermanence. All conditioned things are of a nature to decay. He's talking about his body, that he is impermanent. And that's the very first thing that you need to learn in order to get on the path to enlightenment. Because what the unenlightened mind does is it craves permanence. And it can only be happy when it gets what it wants and what it expects. When the mind's not getting what it wants and what it expects, it experiences anger, sadness, frustration, and other discontent feelings. So when you come to understand that you live in an impermanent world, but yet your mind craves permanence, then you're motivated to be able to train your mind to no longer do that. Because you realize that you're just sabotaging yourself. You're sabotaging your ability to be happy all the time. Because if you can only be happy when you get what you want and what you expect, well, you live in an impermanent world, which means you're not going to always get what you want and what you expect. So he obviously knew that his last words were going to be studied and understood and captured. So he uses his very last words to be able to deliver his very first teaching so that people can actually get on the path to enlightenment. And then he encourages them to strive on untiringly because he understood how important the enlightened mental state is. But the people who hadn't gotten to enlightenment, they didn't understand that. So he was encouraging them, strive on untiringly, keep working, keep growing, keep developing. There's this wonderful mental state of enlightenment that is waiting for you, and you need to walk towards it. And it's going to be through your striving and through your effort that you're actually going to be able to acquire that mental state. So any questions here on the Buddha's last words? Anything you guys would like to ask? No questions? Okay. I don't see any questions anywhere. All right. So what I'll do then is I'll just end by thanking you guys here and thanking everybody online as well. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. As you guys would like to learn more, there's plenty of opportunities for you to do that. Here at the temple, we have a bulletin board there that you can see the options in our website as well at buddhadailywisdom.com. I'm going to be restarting this program from the very beginning on the 9th of August. It's 2 weeks from now because next week I'm going to be teaching the 5 hindrances, which are 5 obstructions that are going to block you from getting to enlightenment. Because what I've been doing for the last 7 months is teaching people what it takes to get to enlightenment. And now the very last class of this program, I'll actually be teaching people what are the obstructions, what are the obstacles to getting to enlightenment. And then the next week after that, which is 2 weeks from now, I'll be starting this entire program from the very beginning. So you're welcome to see all these options, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Whatever you do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.